Right guys, welcome back to another video, and I'm back in my room. It's still boiling, and yeah, so I'm gonna just be recording a quick video on some of the new news that's happened within the NBA that I've thought has been interesting and found to be kind of exciting, and some of it's a bit obvious, some of it's interesting, but yeah, let's get into it. So today there hasn't been any major news in the NBA, and there hasn't been for a few days really. However, the main things that have happened is Adam Silver has came out and said that the take foul will be changed, so the rules will be more harsh on the person doing the take foul, for example. Now this is interesting because he said instead of just getting a sideline out ball, players will be getting a one shot. Players will be allowed to take one free throw, and then they will also retain possession. Now, will this stop take fouls? I'm not too sure, because realistically, if someone's going clean through and you know they're going to get an easy layup, one is less than two, but then you're risking it saying, oh, that means they could get a 4-point play pretty much within the same kind of play because they're retaining the ball, aren't they? Retaining possession. So I think it might help. I'm not sure whether it'll do as much as people think it will. But it's good they've sorted it out, because it stopped a lot of cool plays on the transition where players then could get easy transition points and they wouldn't really get punished for it. Because the effect that a reach-in foul, for example, where you get the same punishment where it just be a sideline out ball, doesn't have the same effect as a take foul does, for example, because these players are missing out on high percentage shots. Whereas if you do a reach-in foul or something that has the same punishment, you're inflicting basically nothing. Because a reach-in foul, you wouldn't usually be going for a shot, because then obviously it'd be a shooting foul. And it's just not the same thing. So the punishment for a take foul was obviously unjust. And I'm happy they've done something to kind of change it. Maybe it was a bit too late, but I'm happy that's done. Moving into the next thing though, is the PlayIn Tournament is now a permanent fixture within the NBA. Now, to be honest, I never thought that it wasn't going to be a permanent fixture. I just assumed now they've put it in, it's always going to be a permanent fixture. Because now what the NBA can do is they can hype up this tournament and say, wow, it's an extra thing for the playoffs so they can make more money. It makes a lot of sense. And it gives the teams that have come 9th or 10th a chance to be in the playoffs, even though they may have had a bad season, but then they can go on a playoff run, and then teams are still having something to play for, rather than it just being the top 6 teams just going for the playoff every single time, which means that teams in 10th, for example, or even lower down the league standings, means that they won't have anything to fight for. So I think it was a good addition. However, it does put a lot more pressure on players, and players that have already played a lot of games every season puts a bit more pressure on them to keep continuing to play, which in some ways is bad, but it just means that coaches have to be more how they rotate players and how to keep players fit and healthy at the standard which is needed for them to perform to get through these play-in tournaments and reach the playoffs, which is the team every season's ultimate goal. Every team in the league either wants to be in the playoffs or they want to be tanking as hard as possible to get the highest draft pick possible, which, as an English person coming from the Premier League and stuff like this where we have relegation, I'm not the biggest fan, but I respect teams having to do that to get back up to the top. And for some teams it works, but obviously for fans like the Orlando Magic, who have been down there for years, and OKC, for example, who obviously they do really well, but then just their plan is to go straight back down. They don't really have a middling period a lot of times. It can be a bit frustrating for these teams, such as the Kings as well, who never really seem to make massive plays in any way whatsoever. But hopefully they get back there. And I support the Celtics, so I'm quite privileged in that sense. I get to see them in the playoffs, almost no questions asked every single year. But it can get to the point where the play-in tournament is a really good idea. For the fans of those teams lower down the division, it can make a more interesting feel to the games, right? They actually mean something. And by the end of the season, even if you are in 11th like the Spurs were, you can still catch the Lakers up and make it to the play-ins, and then even have a chance of getting into the playoffs. So I really like the idea of keeping it in. And in my opinion, it was never going to get taken out. It made them a lot of money, I think, and it was a great idea to add in the first place. Players probably don't think it is, because they have to play extra games and more games as well, but it is what it is. And then the other major news story which has happened recently is the Jazz willing to trade Donovan Mitchell. Now, we all kind of knew this was going to happen. Why would you blow half of your team up and not blow the other half up? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, they've gotten rid of Rudy Gobert, so it became quite obvious that they were not looking to keep another star. Now, obviously, they're going to say they don't want to trade him. However, that is probably to just drive the price up when people come and ask for trades for him. Now it's kind of come out from Woj that they are looking to trade him away, which I think a lot of us expected that the Jazz obviously quite wanted to do this because they obviously don't have their 2 stars now, they've only got 1. Now, I'm not sure what teams would be willing to trade for Donovan Mitchell. In my opinion, he's obviously a great player, but I think he's about 25, so would you rather tank even harder like the Spurs are doing, or would you risk it and go for him and then you're always going to give up draft capital, which a lot of these teams are banking on to get them to the top. He is obviously a proven good player though, and that is the thing with Donovan Mitchell. A great player, and put in the right situations, he could be an important piece on a championship winning team. It's just, do you see anyone trading for him right now? It's hard to say. It's hard to say how much other teams rate him. I can't think of that many teams that are going to go for him. There is some major names on the market this year. You've obviously got Kyrie, KD. Those two, maybe, I think Donovan Mitchell is probably above Kyrie in those, like, how much people want him. He's younger and he doesn't make as much of a fuss. However, you've got KD, who is everyone wants. No matter who it is, everyone's going to want KD. And Donovan Mitchell's 25, so he's at a good age where people could still use him and he can still improve. It's just whether anyone wants to take him over Kyrie, KD, any of these other options out in the market right now. So it's an interesting point, but I'm not sure whether it's going to happen or not. Or if it does happen, it's going to be interesting to see who takes the punt on him and who's actually going to make the trade. And it'll be interesting to see how big the trade package is, because it could be a load of draft picks, which is obviously quite what the Jazz want. They want a lot of draft picks, they want a lot of young players because they're pretty much trying to rebuild. But let me know in the comments if you think that this Donovan Mitchell trade is the right decision from the Jazz. I'm keen on it because they've already kind of blown it up impartially, so you may as well blow it all up. And I think I said that in a previous video, that it gets to the point where you've done so much to get rid of Rudy Gobert, get all this draft capital in, which you got a good price on, so why don't you just do the same with Donovan Mitchell? Like, he's not going to take you to a championship now without your second star. Or the Jazz might have even seen Rudy Gobert as the main star. So Donovan Mitchell is an asset which they obviously don't want to say that they want to trade, but would be willing to trade for more draft capital to get them back in the position that they were in a few years ago, challenging for the NBA title. Right, guys, that is the end of the video. As I said, it's probably the shortest video on my channel. It's just boiling, and I really do apologise, but I can't really do it up here. Hopefully it gets a bit cooler in the coming days, but I don't think it will. I think the weekend is a heat wave, so RIP to me, but we'll get there somehow. I promise I do videos every single day except for Sundays, and I've got a football YouTube channel which you can subscribe to as well. If you have enjoyed this video, I really do appreciate you and thank you so much for watching.